Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May 2022 Garrett Park Town Council meeting. I am juggling the agenda on my phone as I look at the screen. Looks like the first order of business is the oath of office for Jerry Lee Bennett and Lisa Max. So let me call that up and have you both repeat as we go. All right, y'all ready?
Yep.
Excellent.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so I state your name.
I, Lisa Max,
I, Jerry Lee Bennett,
Do swear that I will support
do swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the
Constitution of the
United
United
States,
States,
and that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
and I will be
and that I will
faithful
be
to bear
faithful
true
and bear
allegiance
true allegiance
to the state of Maryland
to the state of Maryland,
and support the Constitution and laws thereof.
and support the
support the
Constitution
Constitution
and
and laws
laws thereof.
thereof.
I will, to the best of my skill and judgment,
I will to the
I
best
will,
of
to the best
skill
of my
and
skill
judgment,
and judgment,
diligently and faithfully,
diligently and faithfully,
without partiality or prejudice,
without partiality
without
or
partiality or prejudice,
execute the office of council member of the town of Garrett Park
execute the office
execute the office of
member
council member of the
Garrett
town
Park.
of Garrett Park,
according to the Constitution and laws of this state.
according to
according to
the
the
Constitution
Constitution
and
and
laws.
laws
state.
of this state.
Excellent. Welcome, welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
And Jerry Lee, glad to have you back, even though you
Thank you.
weren't on. So we call this meeting to order at 7:34. I do like to start on time, so we will try to keep it starting as close to on time whenever possible as we can. It says mayor remarks, but I don't have any. I just want to get started working. So I think I'm just going to skip that part and go straight to the approval of the agenda. Former Mayor Kaki Chantry asked us to remove the resolution thanking her for her contributions to the community, and that in no way means that we are withdrawing our sentiments of appreciation. It just means that she's asked that we not have a formal resolution on that. Does that require a second or anything like that?
I'll second that.
And does it require a vote? Forgive me.
I
Barb.
have another change to request.
Oh, do we have to vote on that, or we just kind of give all the votes? I mean, all the changes right up front?
I would presume we'd vote on all the changes at once.
Okay, all right.
I'd like to add a very quick update on the Strathmore Avenue development. There was a new piece of information that came out today.
Okay,
I can do it right after the Arboretum update.
okay. All right.
Did Mario also ask to be removed from the resolution?
When I spoke with him, and Barb, you can correct me if my understanding is incorrect. My understanding is that he's perfectly fine with it and thinks it's a nice thing to do.
That was my understanding as well, Mayor.
Okay.
Good. Okay.
Any other changes to the agenda for tonight's meeting? Okay, there being none, I suppose we're supposed to vote. All those in favor of the amended agenda, say aye.
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 I think that was all. Okay, so approved. Next is the approval of the April 11th minutes, the minutes of the April 11th council meeting. Any changes, modifications, deletions, additions, anything? Okay, sounds like they're all.
I wasn't I wasn't there for that meeting. I still hold to my philosophy that if you weren't there, you shouldn't really be voting on the minutes, which or making changes to it, which was happening before.
Okay,
Just a sidebar.
okay. The other four, anything you want to? No changes? Okay, all right.
No changes.
So all in favor of approving the April 11th meeting minutes? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that passes. We are rolling here. Presentation by residents. Do we have any, anyone like to raise their hand and make a comment?
Yeah, I'd like a couple minutes if the new council, new mayor would humor me. This is
Sure.
John Nosek on 10930 Claremont.
Please, floor is yours.
Thank you. First, thank you all, particularly the people that are new to the council and the new mayor. I do appreciate you and your service. I know that it wasn't a hotly contested election because it is a fairly thankless job, and I know it's not a paid position for most of you. So I really do appreciate you. And I'll be sending out some literature to everybody shortly. But I do feel that I need to bring up Claremont stormwater issue every council meeting. I will now do so from now until eternity, until there is attention to it, mostly because I need that. For those that aren't aware, there's been 5 floods on my property over the last year and a half, and it is far more dire than I often convey. I think because I've been in very dire situations before, and here in Garrett Park, most of our situations aren't dire, but it is severe. And the last I spoke with Barbara, I appreciated her time greatly, but I was told that she would brief you all in 45 to 60 days. Again, for those that aren't aware, my property will flood severely in the months of somewhere between mid-July and the end of the storm season in September. So in 60 days, July, I will again have a severe flood on the property caused by some manner of stormwater. In the interest of keeping this short, again, congratulations all that are new. I will be sending out information shortly, but I would stress that could you please give this your utmost attention. There are at least 24 Garrett Parkers now that are with me on this, and that this is the #1 priority of the town and/or county's responsibility to fix. But because of all the turnover, because of all the new challenges, because of a lot of different reasons, it's just been drug on for over 2 years now. And I can't anymore. I guess it's literally causing true issues for my family. So again, congratulations, welcome. But when I start submitting things to you all, I hope that it gets prompt attention, because again, within the next 60 days, there will be severe catastrophic flooding on our property due to some municipalities' discharge of stormwater from an 80-year-old stormwater system. So thank you for your time. And again, please look out for things that I send you. I also look forward to maybe a few minutes of there's apparently a closed session tomorrow, and I would hope that at least I could understand what the process is and what, if that has to do with me, which I assume, and what's going on with that. Because again, I look forward to working with everybody, but I'm not sure where we all go from here. And I really need to make progress for myself and for my family.
John, thank you so much for speaking up, and I hope that I wish this were the last time we'd have to hear from you, because I would love for this to be something that we could just snap our fingers and resolve
Right.
right off the bat.
Don't worry.
It's a top priority for me as well. And we are hitting the ground running. And I am going to have to defer to Barb about what details we can share. But this is, I look forward to catching up. I'm not at all, not as familiar with the problem that you have experienced as I would like to be. And so I look forward to definitely coming up to speed on that. Barb, can you speak to whatever else can be said?
Yeah, the only thing at this juncture that we can share is what was in the notice of the meeting for tomorrow night. I think after you've had the discussion, any information that is discussed in closed session can only be disclosed publicly at the request of a majority of the elected body. So that's where we are right now.
That is not very satisfying, but I understand.
Yeah.
Chris Keller, I see that you have your hand raised.
Thank you. I just joined John in congratulating and thanking each of you. And I also want to thank Barbara or whoever is responsible for the increased use of attachments with the notice of these meetings. They really help understand the various issues that are going to be discussed and are current in the town. I would also urge you to begin to think about either in-person meetings or hybrid meetings. There are a lot of combinations and permutations for meetings of this kind. The Zoom meetings have been terrific over the last 2 years, but they're no longer the only alternative to meeting in person. And I would urge you to consider returning to town hall with any number of restrictions you like, or having hybrid meetings, or something that gets away from the impersonal Zoom that has been necessitated the last 2 years. Thank you.
Can you turn off your model train?
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else? And Chris, yes, the idea of switching to in-person is something that I agree is time for us to discuss. And we will address that soon. Anyone else from the public want to join in? Okay. Without that, we move on to the adoption of resolution number 2022-3, thanking Councilmember Mario Grande for his service to the town council.
Mayor, if I may, with the withdrawal of the resolution for former Mayor Kaki Chantry, this item will be renumbered to 2022-2.
Okay, all right. So then we're moving on to adoption of resolution 2022-2. Should I read it? Do you guys want to hear it? Okay, well, I love to read, so
It's not too long.
say again.
It's not too long. Might as well read it.
Okay, all right. So whereas in 2020, Mario Grande was elected to serve as a member of the town council for the town of Garrett Park. And whereas during his tenure, Councilmember Grande served as the town council liaison to the Archives Committee, enthusiastically supporting its mission to document, preserve, and share the wonderful history of the town of Garrett Park. And whereas in addition to serving as the town council liaison to the Archives Committee, Councilmember Grande's administrative areas of responsibility included stormwater management, the Garrett Park Citizens Association, Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And whereas Councilmember Grande was a model of civility and professionalism, always respectful of the opinions of others. And whereas As a member of the town council, Councilmember Grande also helped to facilitate the efficient conduct of town business, thoughtfully and concisely getting to the heart of policy matters. And whereas Councilmember Grande was an active participant in town council matters, even participating in meetings from his car while engaged in business-related travel. Whereas in addition to his 2 years as a member of the town council, Councilmember Grande was part of the leadership of the Garrett Park Citizens Association for many years. And whereas Councilmember Grande decided not to seek re-election upon the expiration of his term in May 2022. And whereas Councilmember Grande has been both a colleague and a friend who will be missed by the town council, the employees of the town of Garrett Park, and town residents. Now therefore be it resolved that the town council of the town of Garrett Park, in conjunction with Mayor Welch, hereby extends its sincere appreciation to Mario Grande for his service as town council member of the town of Garrett Park government, and thanks him for his many contributions and dedicated commitment to the betterment of the Garrett Park community. All those, are any changes to that, or everybody's good with that one? Yeah. All
Good
right.
overall, and thanks Barbara for the idea and putting it together. The only small thing I was just thinking as Joanna read that, it sounds almost like somebody's moving out of town. We're all going to see Mario this summer. So I don't know if anybody else heard it that way, but like the end of it, should it be adjusted slightly? Like it says we'll miss him. It's not like he's going anywhere.
Thanks him for his contributions and looks forward to seeing him at the pool.
Or around town and something like that. It was just, I don't know, maybe I'm the only one, but it just sounds like he's moving to Hawaii or something when he's staying on Rokeby, as far as I know.
Yes. Any objections to that one modification?
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
No objection.
All right. Okay. All those in favor of adopting this resolution, say aye.
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 I,
I think that was 5. Wonderful. All right. Next item of business is a mayoral proclamation about National Gun Violence Awareness Day. So I wanted to say about this, it's a mayoral proclamation, doesn't require council action of any sort, but in bringing it up, I wanted to talk with the council members about what we think about this. Is this the kind of thing that is an appropriate lending of our name or my name, or is this something that it's better off for us to just completely steer clear? I just wanted to get a sense from everyone. If I want to give it some more thought, but I wanted to hear some input. So just for a few minutes, if anybody wants to, any council members want to jump in?
Sure, I'll jump in for a moment.
Please.
And while I certainly think it's a great idea, and I certainly think, you know, what they're talking about is something I would support, my concern is, and has been, with things like this, we're not really doing things on the national stage per se, and there's a lot of very good causes, excuse me, that people bring up, and we would be kind of stuck with, well, what if we deny this person versus that person versus the next? And I think as a mayor, if you wish to do it, that's up to you. But I think as a council, I would suggest that we don't, even as a town. If it's something that we're local, it's a different story. But I think with these issues, there's a lot of, good things. What if somebody from the NRA or something showed up and wanted to have how do you tell them, well, sorry, we're not interested in that one? And so I think the, overall proclamation is good. I just don't think that it's something that we should really dip our toes into, because we may end up setting a precedent we don't really want to set.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Okay. Donna, did you have your hand raised? Go
Yes,
ahead.
I do. Thank you. Two-parter for me. One, first off, can you give us some background as to where this proclamation came from, and why here, why now? Because this is not a typical process that Garrett Park takes under consideration or conducts. So, just some information as to where it's coming from.
It was, I mean, it's an annual thing that that I knew was coming up. It was brought to my attention by Peter Benjamin, who's engaged in this as an issue, and it's something that lots of people in town I've seen in years past have worn orange T-shirts and have been involved in other activities displaying support for gun violence prevention awareness. And so it was something that fits with me, and that I thought this was just kind of seemed like a good thing. As a corollary to this proclamation, I raised the idea with Barb and about purchasing some orange light bulbs that we could use to illuminate town properties, and it's something that I plan to do for myself, and we'll be buying several light bulbs and handing them out to neighbors and friends who want to do the same. It was just a topic that seems that it is important to me, and that I wanted to highlight. And but I recognize that it's not just even something that's just a mayoral proclamation is not. It's not just me. So I definitely wanted to get the input of others and get a sense from others how they feel about that. Jerry Lee.
Actually, I have two parts.
Oh, I'm sorry, Donna. Yeah.
Sorry, Jerry Lee. Thank you. The second part was I just wanted to state that I, like Phil, I'm also thinking that this is a mayoral proclamation, but while it's a mayoral proclamation within your purview, it does represent the whole entire town, which is important to know. No one's going to step back and think to themselves if this is one person or this is truly how a location feels. And I do essentially agree with Phil's point about it being a local issue. Not that this is not I'm sure an issue that has touched a number of our residents. It's not a local example or issue that we're kind of representing there.
Understood.
And that
Yeah.
could be perhaps a qualifier, I guess, if
Okay.
taking forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Jerry Lee?
I just wanted to say that I appreciate Phil's and Donna's point, and I do think that, that is something to keep in mind with proclamations related to national issues. But I do think that this is one that touches all of us. Every time any of us hear about a school shooting, we, think about our own kids. There are people in Garrett Park who send their kids to the Burke School, for example, who went through the terror of that shooting just a few weeks ago. For this one in particular, I do think that there was a lot of community expression about violence against minorities and Black people in particular last summer. And there were a lot of demonstrations by residents in town, a lot of expressions to the council, expressions to the Citizens Association, there was an event held by the Citizens Association. And while they were a little bit focused specifically on that issue of violence by the police against citizens, the general concern about violence with guns was there as well. So to me, I do think that this particular proclamation is in keeping with the spirit of Garrett Park views.
Okay. Lisa? Or Steve?
Peter, does this passing this resolution give does the fact that we pass it or the mayor passes it have any impact on what your work is with the state and gun control and further arenas? Or does it just not really matter?
Joanna, may I respond to that?
Sure. Briefly.
This is something that happens every year. It is done in order to encourage people to deal with the issue of gun violence. And the day is, and the weekend actually, is Gun Violence Awareness Day and Gun Violence Awareness Weekend. And there is more and more of that going on. And towns throughout the United States and cities have been passing a proclamation very similar to this. Rockville has, Gaithersburg has, Chevy Chase has, Tacoma Park has, Kensington has. I mean, they're all over the place in this county and across the state and across the nation. And so this is an important thing for trying to raise awareness that this is something we need to deal with. And it has made a big difference in legislation that has been passed in the last couple of years in the Maryland State Legislature.
Thank you. I would support you passing this resolution, Mayor Welsh.
Okay. All right, Steve.
I'm still a little leery. I'm in a similar vein to what Phil and Donna were saying, that it might be distracting, and it's an issue that this town doesn't really have any power on, or we don't have any laws about it, or we wouldn't really make any laws about it either. So I'd be worried, like, what's the slippery slope if future mayors start bringing up different issues that are near and dear to them? I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody that's for, gun proliferation for violence. But to me, it seems like an obvious thing. I'm just not sure how it matters that small towns make proclamations, and things like that. And I'd be worried about it, coming up as a debate with some other issue where it's, harder to get, a near unanimous opinion on it throughout town, like a gun violence. Like, nobody's going to be against that, but a lot of other things could be more up in the air. So I'd hate for that. We're all volunteers and we're all unpaid, trying to do this, like, fit this in with everything else in our life. I'd hate for it to become a slippery slope in future years when we end up spending hours debating back and forth on whether or not to proclaim this or not proclaim that. So this is my 2 cents.
All right. So we've heard from all council members. Chris Keller, you, if you'd like to chime in for a quick sec, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
I would just observe that 40 years ago, the fact that we were a small town did not stop us from taking a position on an issue that we couldn't really affect one way or the other, but we felt it was important to be heard. And we were the first. And we made the New York Times.
What was that issue? I'm afraid I have to.
For an issue of this sort, the question isn't whether we're the first or our individual action makes any difference. At this point, the issue has been around long enough that one hopes that the cumulative effect of very small gestures of this sort might make an impression. And I would also observe that one of the two statutes, the two oldest statutes on the books of the town of Garrett Park at this time pertains to firearms.
Yeah, okay. Chris, can you please make me wiser by telling me what this issue was 40 years ago? I'm afraid I don't know what you're referring to.
The nuclear free zone.
Ah. Okay, all right. Okay, so I think that I would like to give this a bit more thought. It doesn't require that action be taken tonight particularly. So I would like to just set it aside and think about it for a little bit longer, but yeah. Okay.
I just want to make one final comment. It has nothing to do with this per se, but I would suggest that if you're looking for orange light bulbs, instead you consider the new LED ones, because you can change the color to whatever you want. So that way, if you decide to support something else, say breast cancer awareness, which is pink, you can change it to pink on your phone. Anyhow, just a thought, that's all.
Okay. Okay.
Joanna, thank you for bringing this matter for public discussion before making the proclamation. I appreciate that.
Sure. It seems, it made sense to me that it's not just the Joanna show. And so I need to make sure that I don't make it seem like that. I wanted to hear sort of a sense of who we are as a town and where we should go with something like this. Okay, so moving on, next order of business is an update from Chief Election Judge Louise Stomorowski on the use of the optical scanner technology.
Yes, first of all, I just would like to say thank you. I think Garrett Park as a team and as a town made it through in-person election using a little bit of technology and brought it in line with the form that was, appreciated and suggested by both the council. And this is really, again, a really team effort. As I said, the Citizens Association played their role, the council, the much thanks to Barb Matthews and Elizabeth Henley from the town office, and the judges, the other judge, Jenny Krivakak, who was great that afternoon. And, again, our poll workers and the voters, because 225 people voted. And that's a 27.3% turnout of about the 823 qualified voters that we were able to determine exist here in Garrett Park. And that's for an uncontested election and in person. I was impressed by the technology that the Electech people were able to provide. I think the scanner that we used was smaller and more portable. We had a backup one in the truck. We had a technician from Electech that stayed with us during the day, and again helped us to see the ups and downs and the limitations of the machine, as well as its ease in allowing ballot to be scanned and then keeping the ballots here on site in a secure manner until we were ready to count them, and counting them very quickly and appropriately. So again, I think it worked well. I mean, we have room for it in the post office. We were able to not do a mail-in type thing. I think we learned the limitations though too. I think number one is cost, and I'll let Barb talk about the total cost this was for us. But I think we brought it in well below the $7,000 commitment that we were willing to make in town. The one technical thing that we learned, and we learned very quickly because none of us really appreciated it, was the fact that if you do not darken any of the squares, for voting, that the machine will not appreciate that the ballot has been voted. So a ballot that was left empty with no darkened squares would not scan. So these were not, we had 3 such ballots, and they were not discarded in any way. There was a separate slot on the side of the machine. They went to a separate compartment. So we had the number of scanned ballots, including our absentee ballots, which scanned is the same way that our voted ballots in person did. But then we also had these 3 other ballots that we hand counted, as well as 1 provisional ballot. We had 1 ballot that was spoiled. So we learned a little bit about what the machine will accept and not accept for going outside the black boxes and everything. And I think I only saw, and I was there the whole morning of maybe 2 people had to put this, had to actually feed their ballot in, because you could put it in upside down or right side up, that they actually had to feed it in a second time just because the pressure going into the machine was poor. So I was impressed by the technology as far as the ease of it. It was most like a shredder. It was like a tall shredder rather than the kind of monstrous machine that breathes fire that we're used to at the county elections. And again, I think that the tech really was able to help us. This first time, there is a option in the future that if you want just the machine delivered, they can deliver it and come back at the end of the day and pick it up. But I thought, it was a really good learning experience, and I thank everybody who was involved, as I said, especially the 225 people who voted. And we got our results back. We have literally everything right in person, and they're in a box that we will keep on file here for 6 months. The real question becomes like what we do in the future, like if people are happy with this. Again, it's a town decision, and the council is the main ones to decide. It doesn't have to be decided tonight, but I just point this out as our first time through. And the other question, if we do ever want to look at, what kind of election would warrant having voting, would an uncontested election warrant having voting versus not, because it doesn't change the results. And I think that's to go back to the pandemic model where we wrote in literally that if it's an uncontested election, there would be no actual voting, that we would have the people still do their financial disclosures, and they would take their office similar to tonight at the next council meeting. So I think that's the leadership role we really need. Judges are to be reappointed next February. So hopefully we'll have 3 judges back then, but we had poll workers that were sick. We had poll workers that were a little bit uncomfortable with the mask situation and a closed situation. But I think for, the time and place we were, I think we delivered what we needed. And the confusion, a couple of people were confused when, as I said, when the ballot didn't scan. And that was and that was like for a moment or two, but I think through myself and Jenny, we were able to catch it, and we, had an alternative way of looking at it and doing it that did not lose the ballot, and hopefully calm the person once they understood what was happening. So we had a couple moments of just surprise, literally. So, but I think that's true of any technical thing I've ever had, is like 15% is going to be a surprise. So I don't think it was far off. And again, I'm very open to feedback from anyone else.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Louise. So it sounds like the issue of an empty ballot, easy enough to just have a none of the above, so that at least there's a mark of some sort. Because we don't necessarily want someone who chooses not to vote for any of those people to be singled out, even though their names aren't on the actual ballots. It still is not as anonymous as it would be if it were lumped in with all the others.
Right, and there would be a way that you would word this, because I don't want, and none of the above sounds like it's it's 1, 2, 3, 4, like equal weight. And I'm talking 3 out of 225 ballots now.
Sure,
So,
but something where they're actually
would appropriate, that would, but would let you darken a ballot, say.
Right. How long did it take for the results, for the machine to generate the results?
It was literally within 5-10 minutes. I mean, you had to go through the same kind of thing you do with the county election, as far as verifying the numbers before you started, verifying. And we did this at the beginning of the election, and we do it at the very end, because you get a tape with all this on it saying, it's very professionally done. Mm-hmm. So, but again, the machine tallies it as it goes along. So it's done, but again, it was a matter of opening the back, taking the ballots out, and then tallying on a tape.
And did you all look at the actual ballots themselves? Was there any reason to go back? Was that part of the sort of confirmation of the results?
No, they're there if it should become a question, but we did not go back through all the 225 and verify 225, because otherwise, you're not, what are you paying for?
I was just curious.
Yeah. I'm kind of like, I don't go through my checklist even at the grocery store with every single one. I mean, it just, but I do say the 3 that were surprising to us, and the provisional ballot was a different color. The one provisional ballot was a green instead of white. So that again was a non-scanned one. But again, the ballots we do have in hand, we have the tape itself, we have the spoiled ballot, there were 4 absentee ballots, and we have the envelopes that they were sent in. So again, I think if there's any concern or question, we have the raw data.
Wonderful. Donna, you had a question?
More of a comment and actually a sincere thank you to.
We're having trouble hearing you, Donna.
Can you hear me now?
Not very well. The microphone, I don't know where the microphone is in relation to your mouth, but it's quite hard to hear you.
Is this
Oh, that's
better?
great. Yes, much better.
Great, because my headphones just died.
Sorry.
We just wanted to thank Ms. Komiarowski for being our lead for the elections and using this new technology. We really greatly appreciate her flexibility and her enthusiasm and her leadership in getting this new technology out there and used. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Steve, you had something.
Comment and a question. Also wanted to thank Louise and Jenny and the rest of the poll workers and election judges. Did a great job as always. Really appreciate all that time and effort you put into it and all the professionalism. Very impressive. And then I also had a question. It sounds like it's very quick to do it with the digital scanner to get the vote tallies. One of the reasons I was open to supporting doing it this way was to kind of continue to kind of save effort for the election judges and the poll workers. I think before it took hours to tally, but I was curious, how does this compare to hand tallying?
Louise?
Yeah, we were on site from like about 6:10 in the morning to about, the polls closed at 7:30. So again, it's a long day, but we, again, it certainly cut our day, cut 3 hours off at the end of the day. It took a 3-hour job and did it very efficiently in, again, a matter of 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But
Another reason for asking, I think, is I guess years ago there was more of a tradition or an unofficial tradition of tallying votes and then being able to announce the night of the election and ringing the town hall bell. And one of the reasons, I think it was maybe 5 years ago, mayor and the council got together and had a whole long session kind of updating all the election and procedures and just trying to add in the ordinance. And one of the things that we kept coming back to was trying to make it less painful for all those that are working on the election. I wonder if this scanner, does that make it that a topic that should be revisited? Maybe make it where things could be elected or could be announced the night of. And granted, this one was, but I think we had changed it so it wouldn't be expected or promised that it would be announced the night of,
Right.
just to lessen that pressure on those folks that are working all day.
We did have at least one election when I've been on the election team here, where we did the counting the next morning. And then there was a question about, where the box was during the night and was it safe, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I really felt the ballots were very secure in this. Again, we had the key, it was locked. No one got in there until we got the ballots out, literally. So the ringing of the bell, we would have loved to have had it too. It's in the town hall though. It's up on the 3rd floor, I've been told, where it's very dusty and hot, and it would keep one of your Garrett Park workers, they would have to stay around late at night and go up in there in a dusty bell. So we would love to have it back too. So I think that's something that Barb and everyone has looked into, that at least ring the bell for when we're done, or whatever the town would like to go back to, because it's appreciated that we need a celebration, and many times more of a celebration. But I think, again, for where we were and the time and place, and trying to get back in person and yet use the part of technology that we need, or that would meet Garrett Park's need, versus, 2 years ago, we sent all our ballots to New Jersey. The same company got all our ballots, fed them to a scanner, and then we got the scan results back. So this way we were able to take the one piece of the technological expertise and modify it for our own use. And again, it fit well into our post office, and I don't think we disrupted traffic there too badly.
Lisa, did you have something you want?
I just wanted to know, what did we spend for the scanner company for counting 225 ballots? Does somebody-
I haven't received the final invoice. I will share that with you all. I think some of the numbers we talked about before were based on a higher ballot ordering count. I think once we knew the election was uncontested, we did assume that there would be, lighter voter turnout. We also were able to use some of our booth and privacy screens. So that will come off the number I gave to the mayor and council originally. So I don't have that exact figure for you tonight, but once I get that invoice, I will certainly make it part of my next manager's report. So that information is available publicly.
Thank you.
Just out of information, our tech happened to be one that does work at Gaithersburg. He's actually from Pennsylvania and the company is from New Jersey. So he goes up and gets the machines, drives back, and after leaving off the machines in New Jersey, after everything was done, he went back home to Pennsylvania. But he happens to work the Gaithersburg group too, and they use the same company. And he says they use 8 of these scanners. So again, it isn't just us.
Louise, can you describe to everyone how big these scanners are and how much space they actually take?
Again, the exact measurements I don't have sitting here in front of me, but essentially it was, the size of a
Copy.
yeah, it was taller. So it was, you were coming up to it, it was probably 4 feet tall, but it was like no more than like 3 feet by 3 feet, I would say. It was small enough to fit in again, you just simply loaded it in the front on the top, and it didn't make any difference. It was upside down or right side up, and it fed in very gently. In fact, we had several people comment on how smoothly it worked, and then it went click and acknowledged that it took your vote.
Great, thanks, Louise.
Thank you so much for that update, Louise. This was seemed like quite the smooth election, and we raised some issues that we need to look at before the next cycle. So
Right.
we do that.
Well, again, thank the whole team. It was a townwide type
Yes.
thing, and we appreciate everybody's cooperation. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the summer hiatus. Typically, the council takes 1 month off for of council meetings. It doesn't mean that we're not busy or that we're not engaged. If we don't have a meeting, it just means that we don't have an official meeting that month, but we still are active and still busy and working hard. This year, as we've done most years, we're looking at canceling the August meeting. And so if we can, if that's amenable to everyone, we will cancel the August meeting. Any objections, any thoughts about that?
I'm in favor of dropping one meeting. Is there any interest in considering July instead of August?
My concern with July is that we were on pace, and we'll get more information from Barb in a bit, but I think we might be on pace to have our new town manager, like that process. I think we will have wrapped that up and possibly even hired somebody by July. I don't know how that would work. I don't know if that's a good idea for, the very first month that person's here to not have a meeting, timing wise. Barb, what do you think?
Sorry. I talked to David Deutsch of the Mercer Group Associates this afternoon, and I did want to talk to the mayor when she's in the office on Wednesday. We need to sort of decide who advances in the process. Their next step, I think, before you even interview would be to do reference and background checks. So it's a little hard for me to tell you exactly when that person would be starting. But hopefully, that is a potential that that decision could be made and the person could start by your July meeting. Obviously, if someone's working, they need to give notice. So I can't really give you an exact time frame right now. But I think you will definitely be in a position where you could be interviewing in the first half of June, or I would believe, depending on your schedules, of course.
Okay. Jerry, was there something in particular? Was it just that it would work better for your schedule or?
Yeah, it's just better for my own schedule. And in past years, we've just, we've had a discussion about which month would be better. I'm okay with whatever works for the group.
Anybody else?
Okay,
Lisa?
with either July or August. I can make either work. I guess if we're traveling, will Zoom participation be an option?
Well, if we're meeting in a hybrid,
Right.
in a hybrid way, that wouldn't be a problem.
Right. Okay, then I'm fine either way.
Donna, do you want to, any thoughts?
Usually either is good for myself or my family, honestly. And especially if the meeting is later in the month in August, it's less important since school is right around the corner and preparations are being made, etc. So July works as well as August does in my opinion.
All right. Phil, Steve, any?
I'm with either month.
Okay.
I would
No.
prefer August, but I can work with July.
Okay. I don't have a preference.
I was curious though about the fill-in town manager position. Would it be more realistic that we'd be looking to have that person start with the September meeting? Would July be too soon anyway?
Possibly. I was just throwing that out there as a consideration, as a thought as to why canceling July might not be as good as canceling August. But you're right. You're right. There's no, might be a bit rose-colored glasses to think that the person will be up and running in July. I mean, if it's
Last time we had a little bit of overlap too, to kind of the seated town manager or the experienced town manager was kind of onboarding and teaching me anew. So I think I can't remember how long Jean and Andrea overlapped, but it might have been a week or two.
yeah,
I remember.
To play devil's advocate, I would just want to say that we still have activities. We have 4th of July in town, which does require some interaction, as it should. And August technically is more of a dead month, if you will. That's the only justification I would say to keep it in August. But
Right.
otherwise, I would.
I'm
support
fine with August.
Giving
just
it a
wanted to
try,
check the
giving it a college try for the year and see how it goes.
Yeah, I just wanted to check the temperature. It's not a big deal.
It'll be hot in August.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jerry, are you okay with okay, all right. Well, so
Yes.
All in favor of canceling the August 2022 council meeting, say aye.
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 And those opposed?
Aye.
No opposed. Okay. That passes. All right. Let's see. Next on the agenda is delegating administrative areas of responsibility. So it's not that I wanted to make any decisions tonight about divvying up or even addressing the areas of responsibility. I just wanted to raise it as an idea that we have typically met as a group to talk about our priorities and see how to make sure that nothing, the high priorities don't fall through the gaps, and that we are able to address everything that needs addressing. So with this meeting tomorrow, plus potential, another potential meeting and coming up, does anybody have any, is this something that we can put off for a couple of months? What do you think?
Just a point of clarification, just so in other words, you're looking for how do we organize ourselves here internally?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, we've typically, it's not always a sure thing that a council member's area of responsibility continues year after year. Sometimes it gets mixed up, or not mixed up. Sometimes it's switched around, especially when a council member leaves and another joins. So it is like yes, it's an internal thing, but it's also an opportunity for us to talk about our priorities and where we want to put our eggs.
Well, you are a new mayor, and perhaps you might want to, even just for your own planning purposes and sanity, to wrap your mind around, which perhaps you already have, I don't know, around how and what is going on currently before we can start discussion. I personally agree with your point of delaying it maybe at least a month to just feel everything out. But that's just an opinion.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, Phil.
If possible, I'm happy to delay it a month. I've got 2 things that I'm working on right now. They're kind of big, and I wanted to at least get them moving anyway, in case we decide to change things around.
Okay.
One you're about to hear about, and the other one will be a report later on.
Okay. Lisa?
Yeah, one of the things that I'd love to work on, and I think I've been pretty successful with this in my past career roles, is to try to help Steve and identify where the money can come from to do the renovation of the town hall. And when I voted in the election, I met this guy, Al Carr, who's I think on the House State.
He's a delegate and he's running for county council.
And he said that he'd love to help us find the money and raise the money for the renovation. So I took it, he gave me his card and he gave me a cell phone number. And I thought, well, that sounds like something that might be worthwhile. But I think there's people in town who could help steer us in the direction to try to get our hands on what pots of money are available once we have a budget and a plan of what we're going to do and get some bids. But I'd like to offer my services and my focus in helping with that process. I really like to raise money and find money, and so I'd like to make myself available if that would be helpful.
Sure. How about I think we should probably wait until next month. I think let's try to do a meeting next month. Kind of, what did we used to call it, like I don't know, I forget what we called it. But it was
a retreat.
A working session.
A working session, retreat, something like that.
Responsibilities.
Powwow. Yeah.
I remember being disappointed to find out that the retreat was just the town hall.
Right. Yeah,
regular
right?
meeting. So
okay, so let's Barb, let's put that on our sort of list of meetings and things that we want to address in June. Find a time that we can all get together in June for that. Okay, let's see. So next item, we have an update on 11321 Kenilworth Avenue, commonly called the Yindle property. Phil or Barb, which of you would like to give an update on that?
Phil, what's your preference?
I can let you start and I can fill in the blanks. I mean, well, let me start, I guess. Yeah, that's probably the easiest thing to do. Yep.
Okay, I guess just by way of background, I think for those who may be on the call who aren't familiar with it, this property is located at 11321 Kenilworth Avenue. As the mayor indicated, it was formerly owned by Letitia Yindle. She conveyed the property, gifted the property to the town in 2006. The conveyance of the property was subject to a life estate reserved to Mrs. Yendel. In conjunction with the execution of the property gift deed, there was a deed of conservation easement and a maintenance deed were executed kind of part and parcel. I did include copies of all three documents in your agenda packet. Would just probably call your attention specifically to Article 2 of the deed of conservation easement, which outlines how the town can utilize the property. In essence, it's more of a kind of a park-like open space more than an active play space. I have had a number of discussions in recent weeks with Ms. Yendel's representative, and basically subject to the approval, obviously, of the mayor and town council, she and I would like to propose the following, that we sort of set a 90-day timeline for Ms. Yendel's representatives to remove any items that are of sentimental value. Apparently, there are several documents that Ms. Yendel would like removed and given to nieces and nephews. They've also indicated that the town has the opportunity to go through the property and keep anything that may be of archival value to us. During the same 90-day period, she and I discussed working cooperatively to identify a nonprofit organization or other entity who may have interest in repurposing some of the household fixtures, such as kitchen cabinets, things of that nature. And then at the end of the 90-day period, if we haven't made any traction in identifying anyone who would want to help kind of deconstruct the house, if you will, then we would sort of move to the stage of talking about actually demolishing the structure. Ms. Yendel's representative did express a willingness to at least kind of keep the conversation open about who would pay for the cost of demolishing the structure. Obviously, she also has obligations to the heirs that she needs to be cognizant of. One of the issues that still needs to be worked on a little bit, as I mentioned a few moments ago, there is a life estate that was reserved to Ms. Yendel in the documents. Ms. Yendel is still with us. She is in a care facility. So how that life tenancy might be terminated early is a question on the table. I have spoken to the town attorney about that, as well as Ms. Yendel's representative. So that will be a matter that just requires further discussion. As noted in the memo, this matter has been discussed by the Parks and Open Spaces Committee. And with that, I think I'll turn it over to Phil to kind of update you on that piece of the puzzle.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. So a couple of things. We have, the Parks and Open Space Committee is convened twice, once as an informational session to kind of bring everybody up to speed, and once as a on-site at the Yendel property to take a look at it and start to think about ideas and so forth for its future, I'll call it development, if you will, or turning it into a park. We're fully aware of the restrictions that are on it. And in the interim, I've asked, and Barb is arranging to have a topographical survey done of the property. And we're also going to talk with Jason Lazar about drainage to make sure that we're not putting stormwater onto somebody else's property. And also some of the nearby residents have complained about stormwater through the backyard. So we're looking at that. So we've got a couple things going there. There was also going to be an environmental survey to verify that there aren't any hidden things like oil tanks, asbestos, and the like that might possibly have been there. And the other thing we were looking at trying to address at some point, kind of tied in with this, is to replace that gate that's there with something that looks a little bit nicer but still has the same function. Because I know people complain about that iron pipe that we've got there. So basically, I think we're moving along. We've got, once we get the survey done, then we can look a little bit at the stormwater to see what we can do within the constraints of the conservation easement. And also we'll have the footprint laid out for the whatever we can do that might be well, they call it playground equipment, but I'll just call it hard equipment or something else like that that may or may not be put up there. I mean, may just be a park bench and whatever, but the group is currently working on that, and there's actually a doodle polls coming out to schedule our next meeting. To
Have you already contracted? Have we already contracted with someone to do these the topographical and environmental surveys?
I believe we have, because right, Barb?
We have not, Jason Azar, Clark Azar, they're the town's civil engineers. They are in the process of identifying a survey company. This is an extremely busy time of year, so they were going to reach out to a firm in Baltimore to see if that work can maybe be expedited. But those proposals will come to me for signature. So hopefully we'll know something within the next couple of weeks and that work can get started.
Okay. All right.
Oh, and the other thing that's very important is that we need to bring in the Arboretum Committee to help look at some of the trees and bushes and the like that are there, to identify things that should probably be removed as being invasive and things that we should probably make an effort to save. While most of it we can't really take down, there may be certain special things we want to be careful about, or certain things that we may say we want to remove. Granted, we can only remove something that's less than 8 inches in diameter. Plus, it'd be a good idea to get everything on the tree survey at some point too.
Okay.
Any questions?
I had sent Barb the names of some engineers that did some work for my company on, we just finished a project at 7733 Bradley Boulevard. They did the surveys and the land use planning and all the environmental and plan for all the civil plans, I would say. So I just sent it to Barb if she wanted to contact them and get a bid on a proposal to doing the work. They did a really good job, and I thought everybody who worked with us thought they were very happy with them. So, and they're a local company. So I sent Barb the contact information.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. All right, moving on. Let's do some town updates. Jerry Lee, would you like to kick things off with the Arboretum Committee? And you also wanted to talk about the Strathmore project.
Thank you. The Arboretum Committee elected a new chair, Sean Conlon, at its last meeting. They reviewed several coordination requests from the Land Use Advisory Committee. Right now we have a really good communication going on between those two committees to make sure that when trees are involved in permits, that we get those addressed more earlier. And also we're working with the town office on better communication with property owners when permits are issued with respect to tree preservation measures. Following up on last month's discussion, the arborist is going to do a site assessment at Rokeby Avenue, and then the committee will put forward some recommendations on how to address any replanting in the area where the stormwater work was done. We are also, one of our members, Lizzie Glidden Boyle, has been working with a landscape architect from University of Maryland and is coordinating with the sidewalk planning with Phil and the engineering team there for potential design support for plantings surrounding the sidewalk replacement there in the 4600 block of Waverly. Barb and the office team are continuing to work on a vine removal, invasive vine removal contract with a vendor. And last but not least, we have scheduled a spring tree walk for Sunday, May 22nd at 1 p.m. So I hope everyone can turn out for that. For the Strathmore Avenue redevelopment, the town received notice today that the county council will be considering the local map amendment issue tomorrow during its council meeting. And it is scheduled at 2 p.m. to conduct a hearing related to whether it will receive oral arguments related to that matter. It is possible that they will make a decision to receive oral arguments, or it is also possible that they may act on the recommendation from the hearing examiner to grant the local map amendment. So we're not sure how that will go, but I will, after this meeting, forward that to the town listservs in case anyone wants to listen into that county council meeting. Any questions?
I've got a quick question for you. Who should I contact, or who should POSCO contact on the Arboretum Committee to discuss the trees? Because we had contacted somebody, but they never replied.
Okay, yeah, I sent a note to the arborist and I'll send him a reminder because I think it would be best for him to do that site assessment there at the Endell property.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
And question two, can I get a copy? I'm not sure who has it. The design that's in the works for that block of Waverly by the tennis courts. I suggested doing what's kind of happening now in 2018, and I was told that it couldn't and shouldn't be done. So I'm glad to see it's finally getting done, but I feel like I have some feedback I could offer. I do that for a living, but I haven't seen those drawings. Been hearing about them and haven't seen them.
Okay, so you're actually referring to the sidewalk engineering work. I think
Yeah.
there's an update on the sidewalks coming up. My update is simply that Lizzie is arranging for landscape architectural design for the plantings surrounding the sidewalk design.
Okay, I guess maybe I should have said it a little different. What I've been pitching for a couple of years is that it's not just a sidewalk, and not just a sidewalk designed by an engineer, but a sidewalk designed by a landscape architect. Like a lot of times I've done that in parks design. You just get a different kind of aesthetic with that kind of a thing. So it could be something that kind of blends in how you get out of the cars, how you walk past to go to Penn Place and then back to Montrose, how it deals with the slope, how it deals with the trees, and maybe it lends itself to other uses. It could be more than just a sidewalk. If we're going to be spending a fair amount of money on it, I feel like we should do it right and do it once, versus kind of just Band-Aid approach. I know nobody
Right.
here is proposing a Band-Aid approach, but that's what happened a couple of years ago. And I was proposing doing kind of what's happening now, because that is a tough slope to deal with. So yeah, it should just be done right. So I'd like to participate in it. So that's what I guess I'm asking. It overlaps a little bit with the two groups. So.
Right. Yeah, I understand. I think that sounds like a great idea. I haven't personally seen any drawings come out of the effort yet, so I'll defer to Phil on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think he's. I was probably jumping the gun because I think he's going to talk about it later. So.
Okay. Donna, would you like to do an update on ARPA?
Yes, thank you. So on April 13th in the evening, the ARPA task force met with Ron Bolt, myself, and Barbara for a quick overview from Ron on what the ARPA funds are and aren't and how they can be used. The whole entire task force was present, and we made two requests of the task force. One is to provide ideas and project proposals, if you will, project ideas more than anything, just one sentence thoughts, which they also provided during the meeting on how to use the ARPA funds, and as well as scheduling regular Thursday meetings for an hour and a half as we go forward with that process. And the Google poll has been sent out, and the information from the task force is being collected currently.
So it's been almost a month. Is there another meeting planned yet?
Yes, they're planned, and we've just sent out a Google poll asking for agreement for follow-up dates and times.
I see. Okay. All right.
I have a question for Donna.
Yes, Jerry Lee.
Hey, Donna, I was wondering if it would be helpful if the town council perhaps gave some guidance to the committee, for example, on the timeline. For example, maybe recommending a date by which the council would want to receive recommendations from the committee for, broad recommendations for how to expend the ARPA funds.
I understand your concern and thought process. However, I'm not sure if there's a process that needs to be followed in this regard, as this task force isn't really informing the whole entire council, how just myself primarily. Perhaps we can have a decision as to when you think it would be feasible to have those thoughts and proposals to the council for discussion.
I guess I'm sort of unclear about the task force.
Sure.
So this isn't, I mean, it's not a, it's an ad hoc, this is just a group of people that you invited to help you form some ideas to bring to the council, or
Correct.
I'm not quite sure how that works. And I mean, that seems like a layer more removed than perhaps these residents deserve. I'm unsure.
Well, it's not, it is a task force that I've called together. I do advise me. It is not a advice to the mayor or the council writ large. And the task force is created to not only propose perhaps ideas, but also come up with a transparent way to ensure that the decision-making process is open, is open and clear to everyone in town as to how those decisions and how those recommendations were made. If you could understand, this is not a small amount, but not a large amount at the same time of funds based on analysis of other towns and EUs that conduct the same kind of business. They have various approaches from something that looks more of like a funding application to the U.S. government to smaller towns just coming up with ideas and moving forward with funding for those ideas with the ARPA funds. So this team does both in essence and advises me moving forward to discuss it with the council and provide information.
I was curious, are there minutes?
This is not a council as like it's not a council like a arboretum council or anything.
Right, exactly.
No.
My sense from reading the materials that were used for recruiting the task force members, however, sort of gives it more of like a, please help us decide this, not please help us decide how somebody else is going to help other people decide. Like it feels more removed than I think it needs to be. And I do like Jerry's idea of saying, this is not we don't want to wait 6 months to come up with ideas before it even comes to the council. This is going to be a council decision, and we'd like to move forward. I know there are some hurdles right now in figuring out how we want to spend the money, and I think there is some guidance that the council will need to give, so that the
then perhaps I don't understand what you mean by council. For all due respect, what is it that Jerry Lee perhaps is a better question for you? What is it that what would that look like?
Well, I mean, it sounds like, you've said a couple times that this is a task force to guide you as opposed to the guiding the council. And my impression from when the committee members were solicited was more that they would actually, that it would be more direct, that their opinion would be more direct in getting to the people who are deciding how the money is being spent.
I hope I didn't mislead anyone. That wasn't the intent, nor was the advertisement in that kind of light. So I certainly hope not. And that was not what was presented and discussed at the meeting on the 13th. So the task force itself seems to understand and be happy with that. I think there's perhaps a thought process that this is removing some sort of, they're just creating another layer. It isn't. Everything that I would hear from, we would take notes, and everything heard at the task force meeting is public. It's advertised in advance if somebody wants to attend it, of course, and listen in. Not necessarily, chime in publicly at that point, because there's only so much time in the day. But these individuals are very much were very much chosen for various reasons, from the length of experience in Garrett Park, their professional, their personal, and lack of experience, frankly, just so we make sure that we have a well-rounded group and feedback that's coming in from these people.
If I may, I think, just to clarify my question, Donna, I was thinking it might be nice if the council provided then to you sort of a timeline proposal.
Sure. No, I was agreeing.
Yeah, just to help us prepare for the schedule, because I think it is, even though the deadlines under the Department of the Treasury's guidance sounds very far out, I think to do all the planning, to do all the procurement, execution, accounting, et cetera, it will really come up upon us very quickly. And so I was just thinking it might be helpful to set a schedule out in advance and say, hey, in order to meet those timelines, we want to have our proposals from you and your task force by a certain date. That's what I was thinking.
No, and I was saying I agree with that, absolutely. I was also just clarifying for Joanna that what it is and what it isn't, since she had questions. But yes, I don't have any, obviously wouldn't have an issue with that. And yes, the timeline is far enough. It's far enough in advance, but yeah, you're right too. It can creep up on you if you're not planning it appropriately.
Would it be reasonable maybe to suggest that we discuss a timeline at the June meeting? Like maybe if you want to come forward with a proposal for a timeline in June.
Yes, I think that would be a great idea. Once we have our next meeting with the task force, bringing this up with them, and I don't think that should be an issue.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Barbie, got that? We can put that on the preliminary agenda for the June meeting.
Yes, I've got it.
Thank you.
I had a question
that
too.
is, of course,
Sorry,
with
go ahead.
all due respect, that is depending on whether or not the June meeting we have planned occurs before our council meeting. I don't want to make sure that task force has the opportunity to do so. So if it's okay with the council, I'd work with Barbara and make sure that that's in fact the case.
Is it a possibility that it would have been 2 months between the meetings? I mean, what are the, on the doodle poll that you're sending, is it, I mean,
there's a date in May and 2 dates in June. Is that correct, Barb?
Yes, that's correct.
okay. I mean, that concerns me a little bit that that it would be a full 2 months after the previous meeting, when the previous meeting was to ask for ideas. But I understand that getting people's schedules is difficult.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. Steve, you had a question?
Yeah, it's actually, I thought it was 2 parts, but it's actually 3 parts. One is the simplest one. Is there minutes of the meeting? I wasn't able to join it the last time, but is there minutes so we could get caught up on what was discussed?
No, there are no minutes, and there was just for education purposes. It was primarily Ron Bolt giving a description and an outline of what the ARPA funds are.
Okay.
For 45 minutes.
Okay.
Primarily.
So it wasn't really much after that, and then
No, but that I believe the meeting was recorded, at least that one.
Okay. And I think you were starting to describe this earlier, but it was never really explained, like when the idea came up early or initially, but I think I'm still very fuzzy on it. Like, is that committee being asked to make the recommendation on what to spend the money on, or is it about how to administratively handle what it's spent on and not necessarily what is it? I mean, is it about, are they asking, are they being asked what or how? I
They're
guess
being
that's
asked
never been
both
clear.
questions, actually.
Both, okay.
They're being asked both questions.
Okay.
How, in order to ensure transparency, and what.
Okay. And then the third one is with the expediency in mind, and it's a pretty big issue, I guess, for all of us and for the town. And there are some deadlines to it. Like, wonder, is it the kind of thing where we could just carve 15 minutes, say, on each of these meetings to kind of cover that and have somebody that's a delegate from that group come and talk with you, perhaps Donna, and be able to kind of be the envoy for that discussion and kind of bring it to the town council meeting. That way, if there's feedback going back and forth, it could kind of be hit quickly. And if that group feels like they need to spend another hour, an hour and a half, like we couldn't make this meeting 2.5, 3 hours necessarily, but if they wanted to kind of do their session and, you know, we would kind of get the summary and have like a way to trade feedback. That way we don't get 6 months down the road and, you know, find out that there was, you know, something we missed. And that's what I've been afraid of from the get-go on this thing. It would be kind of a pressure situation where the committee would finish its work and tell us, we recommend this and hope you like it, because no time to change it, or, you know, that kind of thing.
It's not a committee, it's only a task force. So at
Mhm.
the end of the day, it's not their decision, it's just their thoughts and ideas as to how the ARPA funds should be used and for what. In fact, it's the council's decision as to what to do with those funds, based on that supporting information and evidence. So that's one point there. So in essence, it also answers your second question. They're not a council that would report back to a council meeting like the Arboretum, you know, council or some such.
Right, that doesn't make any sense to me, but
It's a
okay.
different. It's not a council. That's why. I mean, it's not a council. It's not a excuse me, wrong word. It's not a oh gosh, committee.
A committee.
Thank you. Yeah, it's
We
not a
had
committee.
there was a land use task force, I guess, over 10 years ago, and that there was the whole purpose. They had
Oh, I don't
public
know that
meetings, they had minutes, and then they issued a report that town council had and the mayor had at the time had under consideration. So I guess, you know,
That was
I might be less
before my time, unfortunately.
Yeah, I might be more fuzzy on this even now. So still fuzzy. So
Okay.
Okay. Well, Steve, since you're on the screen, can you give us some updates on all the many things you've got your hands in?
yeah, the simplest one's probably historic preservation. I'm not sure if these are the same order as the agenda. Historic preservation has a meeting scheduled for this Wednesday. It's going to be at Town Hall. Any and everyone is welcome to and encouraged to attend. We're going to be catching up on a lot of irons that were in the fire for that group, how to kind of grow awareness. One of the things that's been noticed is it seems the permit process and what needs to go for historic preservation permit to the county isn't like crystal clear. So we're trying to figure out ways to help residents along that aspect. A bunch of other things are in the works. We'll be discussing that with them. I've been working with Land Use Advisory Committee a little bit lately, mainly with the chair, George Martin. So we've had quite a few things that are a little bit more on the more difficult side as far as like permit reviews, where things are, or where some of the proposed construction is more up against or over the limits and how to deal with that. And one of the things that been kicking around with him and with Nancy Walls from Historic Preservation for a while is possibility of having a combined meeting. So those groups are both in favor of doing that. So we're going to shoot for June to have a combined meeting. So there's a lot of overlap between those committees on what they're being asked to do. One is like the Historic Preservation Committee has a lot of very laid out goals in the and requirements in the ordinance, whereas the Land Use Advisory Committee is that was a mayor's ad hoc committee, I think, that was formed, I want to say 15 years ago. So a little bit less formal, and it's a little bit different than a historic preservation committee. So we kind of want to be able to talk about how they're the same, how they're different, how they can work best together for preserving the town, the streetscape and its open space and the houses and so on and so forth.
Okay.
A sidebar of that, Historic Preservation Committee hopefully would still continue to help with Town Hall, and thank Lisa for offering to help with that as well. So I've sent the RFP for architectural and engineering services draft back to Barb. I had been working on that with Debbie Sandlin before, and I'd put together kind of a draft scope of work. We need to blend those things and finalize that out. So I know Barb's really busy with a bunch of stuff, including getting the getting us off the ground as far as hiring her replacement town manager and possibly more with the maintenance positions and so on and so forth. But hoping we can get that finalized sometime in the near future.
What's the big picture that your scope of work that you're looking at for that?
One of the big pictures is to have an architecture and engineering firm with a historic bent on the architectural side and a historic understanding and sensitivity to look at the existing site and potentially other sites within town. I know those are going to be a long shot, to be able to kind of show the pros and cons of both, and the pros and cons of where it's going to be the much higher percentage to keep it where it is, what could be done, how much it costs, and what are the pros and cons of it, whether it's the functionality or how true you are to the historic preservation goals, because there's a little bit of pull. Like you can't always be pure on the historic preservation goals and lose sight of functionality for 2022, and you can't just ignore, on the opposite side, you can't just ignore that it's a historic structure and has some historic merit to it. So that's what I'm looking for, a firm that's really skilled with that. And one thing, and I'd put together some very schematic schemes of these things just to kind of fuel discussion. And what we were finding is it's a little tough for a lot of people that are lay people to kind of like, you can kind of get it from a description, but you can't really visualize it so much. So one of the big goals of this would be to have that firm put together 3D drawings so we could have a town meeting and be able to see, in addition to the pros and cons of each, from whether it's economics or function or historic preservation, whatever it is, like what it really looks like, how it could fit in either where it is or elsewhere, to kind of see, kind of take the town's temperature. I'd like to take the town's temperature on, where does everybody think is the best way forward for the next 50 years? Because, versus just thinking 5 years down the road.
So is it, so they're coming up with different ideas for scope of, like, are they doing, like, this is a small project, this is a medium project, this is a big project? I mean, are they laying out some ideas of what they see as what possibilities are for?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much like that. So like when I've done this before in the past, like we did it for, I worked at a firm, I put together the whole study for a recreation center. It was in Manhattan, and that's exactly what we did. We had the small, it was like a $7 million job. And then we had the medium, which was kind of what everybody wanted. It was like 20, and these are old numbers, so it's probably double now. It was like $25 million. And then the other was just the pie in the sky. And then it ended up, everybody assumed you wouldn't be able to get the pie in the sky, but they almost got the pie in the sky, but they got something that was even better than the medium. So it was really worth kind of stretching everybody's imagination to kind of see what the potential was, and then figure out like what's important to you, and then how to settle in on what that project is, versus just saying, hey, we need to put new finishes everywhere, fix everything up, and have it be the same thing, just nicer and cleaner. So
And what's what are you, okay, all right. Any questions for Steve?
So Barb, I'd like to see the RFPs that are in the works, just to get to look at them and review them. And Steve, who's going to identify what firms we're going to ask for their proposals? Do you have a group of architects or engineers that you'd like to work with, or are we going to find people, or how are we going to go about identifying who's going to get these RFPs?
there's a couple we could let know that it's out when it goes out, but then we could also post it. I think Barb has some sites that can go out that all kinds of firms can get to, and we can also put it in like the American Institute of Architects. They have a site where jobs can be posted, or projects can be posted. So look at a lot of those avenues. Kind of really like to keep it as open as possible. We might be surprised with what capabilities walk in the door. So
Yeah, if somebody's had a good experience with them and they know what they're doing.
Mhm.
Okay.
Barbara, you were saying?
No, I was just going to echo your comments. Just likely due to the dollar volume of this, it should be publicly advertised.
Yeah, it could be over six figures. So, and the goal would be to kind of get something where we have either one or more town meetings to really again go further with figuring out what the town wants to support. I think we got a pretty clear idea from the shreds that were had before of kind of, it seemed like there wasn't a lot of people that were interested in this being a place for people outside of the Garrett Park and neighboring neighborhoods. It was more of like a local, low cost kind of thing. And that's going to be one of the challenges. How do you support something that's kind of kept local, low cost with, you know, without really having that revenue? So we may have to, that's one of the things we're probably going to be looking at as we go through it. And I think you're going to probably be key in that discussion, Lisa. So,
Okay. I'm happy to help.
okay, thanks.
Phil, sidewalk improvements, any updates?
Yes, so we'll start off with the easy stuff. So the work has been done on Waverly from Kenilworth down to the tennis courts. That rehab is done, with the exception of a few punch list items. And in a similar vein, Oxford is done up to the school, where the school property is. All that's been completed, and there's just a handful of punch list items left, and those projects will be done. The next one that I've been looking at, and this is one people have been asking about, is the one that runs on Waverly from the tennis courts along down to Penn Place. Barb and I met with Jason last week. We discussed some things about it, and he is going to be drawing up at least a preliminary plan. One of the things that I've been pushing for, and will continue to, is to do some type of lighting there of some variety, whether it be a full-size street light or a lower bollard, and something that would allow people to be able to walk down that sidewalk safely. We might consider a full-size street light, like something on Strathmore, only because it would light up the entire street, including across the street. Some of the neighbors may not be happy with that. But we'd like to at least have some safety on the sidewalk there. So we've discussed that. Jason's going to put together some initial plans that will give us a starting point. Sorry, I got a train going by. But what I want to do is at least get a starting point so we can start some discussions, because I know Lizzie has contacted me a couple of times about it. And Stephen, I know you've talked about it. And so I'd like to just get something put together and out there so we can look at it and start to think about what needs to be done, what wants to be done. But for right now, we're looking at probably keeping it at the same height that it is now, only because we've got interfaced with two sets of stairs. So that's going to be an issue. And we're also looking at redoing the curb to make it a regular concrete curb rather than the asphalt one that's there. So I don't know, Barb, have you heard any ideas to when Jason might at least have the first set of drawings?
I have not, Phil. I haven't spoken to him since you and I had our meeting last week, but I just jotted myself a note to follow up with him to see when he might have something that could be shared.
Great. If you need anything more from me, give me a shout, of course.
Bill?
So that's really where that project stands. That's the reason nobody's seen anything, is because nothing's been generated yet.
This is just one of those areas that I just need to be brought up to speed. How is this space, this Waverly from tennis courts to Penn Place, how is that chosen as the next piece that we need to look at?
It's in horrible shape, with panels heaving. It's also, as I had mentioned previously, a dark area, and it's an area that the sidewalk needs some work. So we've always had that one on the list as one to be done.
Okay.
I don't believe we have anything else that needs to be rehabbed right now.
Gotcha. All right. Okay.
So that's
All right.
that one is.
Okay.
And
Bill, I had a question. So for the sidewalk up to the tennis courts and over in Oxford, at the last minute, there was an exchange where the flexible material was substituted in, and it was donated to the town, the services and the materials. Was there a contract change executed for that? And were there any written documents to support those changes?
you have to ask Barb because I wasn't fully involved in that. I actually found out after the fact.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any documents. I believe those were field changes directed by the former mayor.
So is that, I guess, something we can check on just to see?
I was just wondering if there's ever any issue with any of those spots. Do we have any kind of warranties or redress? So
Understood.
having some sort of written documentation would be helpful if that were to occur. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Normally the material has a warranty, but I don't know if it does in this case, if it wasn't purchased or. And I think it literally went in the day that the formwork was in, and or maybe the day after the formwork was in. It was kind of a change on the fly in the field, is my understanding of it. So it wasn't necessarily engineered so that the one section has a ramp in it where there wasn't a ramp before. I think people get used to, but it's
Barb,
not
is this
typical.
something-
So,
is this, Barb, is this something that you can put on your really long to-do list, is to find out
Yeah.
what, talk with the company and find out what warranty they're offering, or is included with this, or just, you know.
Yeah, I
Any-
jotted myself a note, and Stephen is correct. It was a field change, so it was not part of the engineered drawings that were bid.
Okay.
It's just for point of clarification, the modifications that we're discussing, is there and I apologize for missing it if that's the case, was there an issue with it, or has it degraded that it would require these concerns?
I mean, I think, at least from my perspective, the concern is just that it was an on-the-fly decision as opposed to one that was part of the part of the engineering design. I think that's kind of concerning.
I'm asking how big, how honestly, how big is this of a concern, in the sense are we talking a couple bricks in the wrong direction, or is it like a significant modification to the plans therein? And if they are modifications, perhaps even the contractor would have taken them into record.
So there's 3 sections. I mean, I didn't even know about it until I was told about it after the fact. And so the most I can tell you on it is that there's 3 sections that were put in, and they're about 15 feet long each. And there's one on Oxford and 2 on Waverly. And they were put over areas where there's a significant number of tree roots, and it was thought that would be the best thing to use because of the tree roots in the area.
should be very low risk. I mean, it's just probably the worst case scenario is it just degrades much faster than the concrete and has to be replaced with material X in 10 years versus 40 years. But, you know, I can't imagine it would go before then.
And this is for the permeable materials. I assume. Yeah. I'm just putting it out there that I don't think this is a massive concern at this point. However, just having it on record would make responsible sense, of course.
Yeah, I think, and the biggest, because there's very little, not a lot of financial risk, I guess, as far as like if it does degrade, it's not like it's going to bankrupt the town. It's probably
exactly
$10,000 job, but like it's unusual to have something like that be changed and not engineered.
But frankly, just having experience with that lovely corner myself, it's I think I wouldn't be surprised if it does, in fact, not being a engineer of any sort, it does benefit from the permeable, because it would be massive damage to the tree that is residing right there. So I think and I've heard a lot of positive reports back from parents and kids who are going to school and how much easier it is now, and how good it looks, and it's easier to, navigate.
No doubt, but I think it's important, and I appreciate, Barb, that you're going to look into, and we should know what the guarantee is, we should know how we should address a problem should it arrive. It's something that we own, even if it was given to us. So I appreciate that we're getting that information so that we have it on file, have it at our hand, at the ready.
And if I may add, though, I think any contractor worth his or their salt would reply in a positive way, and not just dump it and leave, I guess you could say.
No, except for they're responsible for the workmanship, not for the specification of the material. So there's
No, of course.
there's two different things that work in hand. So,
and because they weren't paid for it, it wasn't, they might not have the same sense of responsibility.
Typically materials, and Stephen, you can confirm, materials are warranted under the manufacturer of the materials themselves, and the work is of the contractor of themselves.
I'm pretty sure that would be the case. I think you're right. It would probably be just the material, regardless of whether you paid $1 or nothing or $1 million. So hopefully that's the case. It would be good to confirm it. And I personally like the one that's at the corner. That's what I was proposing that spot for. I think it's the best spot for FlexiPave of all the ones that were considered. It was back last summer when it was being pitched to put FlexiPave across the Waverly Triangle. I was putting it at that school corner instead. So I was glad, at least, it was kind of a surprise. I wish we could have figured it out back then, which is what I was urging back then, but it was a surprise when it was going in at the last minute. But I think that is a wise spot for it there. It should be helpful to that tree there. It's got a lot of stress with the school buses on one side and all the foot traffic on the other. So, and then the one on Waverly, I think that is a spot that the Arboretum Committee was proposing as a good pilot for surface routes. So that should be helpful as well.
Can we move on to the town manager's financial report?
Just a couple things in my report. I'll just give some highlights. As I mentioned, pretty much everything looks in pretty good order, in the approximate range of expected levels for both our revenues, our operations, and capital. The one exception, as you've been hearing me talk about for a while, is local income taxes. It is still down by about $40,000 compared to last year for reasons that are still unknown. On the positive side, we did receive on May 3rd the supplemental tax duplication payment that the County Council authorized for all municipalities. And our share of that, we just only get one payment that is for road maintenance. And so we got just about $44,405. And we did receive that on May 3rd. So that'll be showing up in your May financial report. Obviously, this was something that the County Council just approved in 2022. So that amount was not assumed in your FY 2022 budget. So if income taxes don't pick up pace for the remaining months, at least we have the supplemental tax duplication payment to help make up that revenue loss. As we've talked about before, there were some required reports that had to be filed with the Treasury Department by April 30th. Those reports were filed by that deadline. Since we do not currently have a council member assigned to archives, I have asked Claire just to kind of keep me in the loop so I can keep you in the loop as well. She is continuing her work to add metadata to our collection of photographs and making some corrections to the names and people and places for consistency reasons. She's also in the process of setting up a new exhibit in the post office lobby, which should be launched later this month. And that exhibit will celebrate the contributions and achievements of women in Garrett Park. And lastly, the Archives Committee will be meeting next Monday, May 16th, and that will be a virtual meeting. Did want to share with you all that I have obtained pricing for the removal of 14 trees that our town arborist has classified as being diseased or dying. Waiting on an exact start date from the contractor, but 10 of those trees are tentatively slated to be removed in late May or early June. I'll share that start date with you once I receive it. There are 4 rather large trees along Oxford. I did speak to the school just to kind of coordinate with them when would be a good date to start that work, because it will last for several days. So the removal of the 4 trees along Oxford basically will take place after the students are gone and after the teachers have wrapped up their work. I believe it might be June 22nd, going off memory. And lastly, I just wanted to kind of thank our maintenance team. They planted just under 30 trees. Obviously, that's very hard work. So I congratulate the guys for getting that done. And they're also hard at work with doing some mowing and other spring cleanup activities. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Curious, how did it go with, I missed it, I was out of town. How did it go with Butch's last day and leaving? I got to see him a couple hours before the end of the day, but.
We have a great photo that was taken by the organizer of his unusual send-off, Jack Mendel. I will send that to all of you after the meeting. I think you'll enjoy it.
He smiled. So.
Yes, he did. He looked like in the photo that he looked like he was enjoying himself.
I had a question for you, Barb.
Sure.
Looking at the town manager's report, it looks like the changes to the reserve accounts are not yet documented. Do those take effect at the end of the fiscal year?
Yeah.
Is that why?
Thank you, Jerry. I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to do so. Yes. Basically, since we were anticipating that there would be some savings in certain accounts, Mary and I talked, we'll be adding those funds and doing the cleanup to some of the reserve accounts at the end of the fiscal year. So you'll see that reflected at the end of June, basically, when you get the financial report for June.
Quick question, Barb. Have the residents abutting the trees that are going to be removed been notified that the trees are coming down and when, and so that we're going to communicate with them?
Elizabeth is, I know, had looked up all the email addresses. I know she's on the call. Elizabeth, I don't know if you've sent those emails to each of the 14 property owners yet or not.
Let's see her on. I was curious, like with the smaller number of people that may be affected, would it help to be like belt and suspenders and go old fashioned and just have like the maintenance staff just drop a flyer in everybody's door that's affected? That way nobody could say, hey, I didn't see the email, or, you know.
We could certainly do that. I think my understanding is we normally actually attach something to the tree itself, basically saying that it's going to be scheduled for removal. Okay. But we also wanted to notify the folks in writing that the trees were going to be removed. The message that we'll be sending will also note that if they have any type of landscaping that they have chosen to plant in the town right of way, we wanted to give them several weeks notice to move any plantings that might be damaged or destroyed during the tree removal process. So that was part of the reason why we've put off the removal work until, you know, probably early June, just to give people a couple weekends where they could focus on that.
Has the Arboretum Committee or made any decisions on what trees will be replanted and where, or does that come further down the line?
Should come further down the line. I have not had any discussions with Phil Normandy about that. Jerry Lee, has that come up at all at any of the Arboretum Committee meetings?
Usually the committee does a planting list twice a year, a spring planting list and a fall planting list. So they'll consider a fall planting list coming up soon. Some of those sites wouldn't be suitable right away for replanting because of the, you know, the size of the stump and everything.
Okay.
Then we can discuss once that's comes closer to the time. I'm sure I'll have questions. Thanks.
Okay. Is there anything else? I don't think anything we've missed, anything that any council member wants to quick chime in on? Because if not, we are ready to adjourn. Great. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.